Recent argument between former President Donald Trump and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett shocked the country. During one of his speeches, Trump looked straight at Crockett's rising popularity and quickly tried to tear her down. With a smirk, he said, "That's why nobody watches you," hoping to make her seem unimportant in front of his cheering crowd. It was a typical Trump comment, short, rude, and meant to hurt. But what he didn't expect was that Crockett wouldn't back down. Instead, she fired back with strength, confidence, and honesty. Her response not only shut down Trump's insult but also won over millions of people across the country who were watching and listening. Crockett's answer wasn't just for Trump, it was for every American who's ever been ignored, talked down to, or told their voice didn't matter. Jasmine Crockett, already known in political circles for her unapologetic candor and fierce advocacy, didn't miss a beat. What followed was a searing, confident, and unapologetic comeback that didn't just respond to Trump's insult, it upended the narrative entirely and reminded America that strength doesn't always come from the loudest voice in the room, but sometimes from the most grounded one. Jasmine Crockett has long been a representative who embodies the fight for working people, for marginalized communities, and for truth in the face of bluster. But this moment gave her a national platform unlike any she had experienced before. Trump's insult might have intended to reduce her to a punchline, a blip on the radar of his ever-evolving cast of enemies. But instead, it shined a spotlight on her resilience and message. Crockett wasted no time, clapping back with a fiery mix of sarcasm and substance. "Nobody watches me?" she echoed on national television. "Sir, maybe if you paid more attention to the people than to your ratings, you'd remember what public service actually means." The comment, delivered with a calm defiance, hit its target harder than any crowd-pleasing insult ever could. But Crockett didn't stop there. She launched into a passionate monologue about the struggles of everyday Americans, the increasing costs of living, the crisis in healthcare, the failures in education, and how leaders like Trump have done little more than fuel division while families suffer. It wasn't just a defense, it was an indictment, and the country was listening. In an age dominated by 10-second clips and political theater, Crockett's comeback cut through the noise with clarity and purpose. As millions of Americans watched the clip circulate online, it was clear that this wasn't just about a verbal exchange. It became a symbol of the broader cultural and political struggle happening in America right now, a battle between those who represent the people and those who merely perform for them. Crockett's words reflected a broader fatigue with the toxic brand of politics that Trump represents. For too long, insults and name-calling have dominated the discourse, often drowning out the real issues. Crockett used the insult not as a stumbling block but as a springboard, redirecting attention to what truly matters. She spoke of families living paycheck to paycheck, mothers juggling 3 jobs to provide, and young people graduating with crushing debt. "They're not watching me for entertainment," she said. "They're watching because they see someone who understands the pain they live with every day." Crockett's response revealed something else too, the deep underestimation of women in politics, especially black women. Throughout history, black women in America have had to fight not only to be heard but to be taken seriously. From Shirley Chisholm to Barbara Jordan to Stacey Abrams, each generation has had to push back against stereotypes and systemic barriers. Crockett stands in that lineage, not as an exception but as a continuation of a movement that refuses to be silenced or diminished. Trump's comment was more than just an insult. It was emblematic of a culture that still struggles to accept outspoken women of color in positions of power. But America saw through that tactic this time. Instead of Crockett fading into the background, she became a trending topic, a voice that resonated far beyond the halls of Congress. Constituents, commentators, and even political opponents took notice, and many couldn't help but admire the strength it took to confront a political Goliath and walk away with her head held higher than ever. Even more striking was the way Crockett leveraged the moment to amplify the voices of the unheard, rather than bask in the glory of a viral moment. She used every interview, every appearance, and every public opportunity to bring attention to real issues. On one local news program, she brought up a letter she had received from a constituent, a single mother of 3 who had written to thank her for standing up to the bully-in-chief. The woman shared how she'd felt invisible for so long, how watching Crockett speak with such fire gave her hope that someone was finally paying attention. "This isn't about me," Crockett told the anchor. "It's about all the people who feel like nobody sees them. If Donald Trump thinks that being watched is the measure of value, then he's already lost touch with what leadership means." That one line alone ricocheted across the internet, getting shared by celebrities, journalists, and activists alike. And it wasn't just Democrats who were paying attention. Some conservative pundits grudgingly admitted that Trump had stepped into a trap of his own making. On a radio program, one conservative commentator admitted, Say what you want about Congresswoman Crockett, but she didn't flinch. She stood toe-to-toe with the former president and made him look small. That sentiment, rare though it may have been, underscored the power of authenticity in today's political environment. While Trump continues to recycle old jabs and tired catchphrases, leaders like Crockett are drawing energy from the very communities he so often overlooks. In the weeks that followed the confrontation, the moment evolved from a headline into a movement. Crockett began receiving invitations from grassroots organizations, young activists, and political groups eager to align with someone who clearly understood how to challenge the status quo. She started organizing town halls with themes focused on economic justice, voting rights, and criminal justice reform. In each of these appearances, she brought the same fire, clarity, and compassion that had made her response to Trump so impactful. More than once, she reminded audiences that insults are temporary, but leadership leaves a legacy. Trump can call me whatever he wants, she said at a packed community event, but at the end of the day, he can't erase the work I've done or the lives I'm trying to improve, and he certainly can't stop people from watching now. And watch they did. Crockett's social media following exploded, her videos garnered millions of views, and her voice carried farther than ever before. What started as a dismissive comment from a former president had transformed into a national conversation about respect, representation, and resilience. Teachers, nurses, factory workers, and students began to share their stories under hashtags inspired by Crockett's message. They talked about being overlooked, underestimated, and talked down to, and how seeing a woman like her push back had inspired them to speak up in their own lives. It was a phenomenon that few saw coming, but one that revealed the hunger for leaders who don't just represent their base, but who reflect the lived experiences of the people they serve. The most powerful aspect of Crockett's comeback wasn't its sharpness, though that was undeniable. It was its truth. In just a few sentences, she exposed the emptiness of Trump's insult and filled the space with something far more potent, a reminder that leadership is not measured by applause lines or television ratings but by the capacity to inspire and empower. Her words reminded America that strength doesn't always shout, sometimes it speaks calmly and refuses to bow, and in doing so, it echoes longer than any insult ever could. Of course, Trump, never one to let go of a grudge, tried to spin the moment. In later interviews and statements, he attempted to cast Crockett as angry, unhinged, and divisive, relying on the same dog whistles and coded language he's used before against women who stand up to him. But this time, the narrative didn't stick. Too many people had already seen the clip, had already felt the power of her words, had already drawn their own conclusions. Crockett didn't need to shout over Trump's noise, her message had already taken root. There is something poetic in how the insult designed to diminish became the exact moment of elevation. It is a testament to the power of grace under pressure, of knowing one's purpose, and of standing tall in the face of ridicule. Jasmine Crockett showed America that true power lies not in silencing others but in amplifying the voices that have been quieted for too long. And in doing so, she changed the narrative not just for herself, but for every person watching who has ever been told they weren't enough. So, the next time Donald Trump decides to hurl a careless insult, he might want to remember what happened here, because the woman he tried to belittle not only answered him back, she reminded the nation of what courage looks like. And courage, once seen, is impossible to ignore. If you believe in lifting up leaders who speak truth, who fight for justice, and who refuse to be silenced by bullies, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any powerful moments like this. Let's keep the conversation going and make sure every voice counts.